Hello everyone, my name is Krish and my selected topics are stress and personality on the experimental and non-experimental studies. Let's get started. Did you know that nearly 75% of adults experience moderate to high stress levels every month? Stress is a natural physiological and psychological response to challenges or demands as noted by Chu in 2024. While it can sometimes motivate us, chronic stress can have harmful effects, which is not good, and it leads to significant mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and burnout. The way individuals respond to stress is often influenced by personality traits like neuroticism and emotional regulation. Those with better emotional regulation tend to handle stress more effectively. Understanding these dynamics is essential for developing effective interventions for stress management, improving overall well being, and addressing the broader mental health challenges facing society today. And let's get forward on the selected areas of the experimental study and the non-experimental study. So let's first talk about the experimental study. And it sheds light on how we can understand and measure stress responses on a larger scale. Matthews Norden and its colleagues in their 2022 study introduced the digital stress test, which is known as DST in its short form. This innovative tool was designed to induce and record acute stress responses in individuals across a wide population. By using digital tools, the DST allows researchers to stimulate stress in controlled environments and collect valuable data on how people respond to stress. This study is a significant step forward in leveraging technology to better understand stress responses, which can ultimately help in developing more effective interventions for stress management. And now let's talk about the non experimental study. Uh, it shows how personality traits influence mental health during challenging times. In the year 2021, Antonella Soma and its colleagues conducted a longitudinal study examining self reported stress, anxiety, and depression among Italian adults during the time of COVID 19 lockdown, which was a hard time for all of us. This study focused on the role of dysfunctional personality traits such as neuroticism in predicting stress levels and mental health symptoms during a highly stressful period. The findings highlight how personality traits can significantly impact an individual's mental health response to crisis, emphasizing the importance of understanding these traits when addressing mental health challenges. And this was all for the this slide, and let's now talk about the experimental study details. So the study by Norden and the colleagues in 2022 explores how digital stress inducing tasks can lead to measurable increases in stress responses. Specifically, the researchers aimed to determine if exposure to these digital stress task affects physiological markers like cortisol levels and heart rate, as well as emotional stress responses. A total of 284 participants took part in this study. Among them, 103 participants, comprising of 50.5% women with an average age of 31.34, completed the stress-inducing digital tasks. Meanwhile, 181 participants, which were 53% of women with an average age of 31.51, engaged with a controlled version of the test. Participants accessed the stress-inducing tasks using a smartphone-based web application designed to simulate real-life physiosocial stress. Stress responses were evaluated through a self-reported emotional scales such as the positive and negative affect schedule, visual analog scales for feelings of stress, and physiological stress markers like cortisol levels. And in this study, it identified stress-inducing digital tasks as the independent variables and stress markers and self-reported emotional responses as the dependent variables. This research offers valuable insights into how digital tool can simulate and measure real-time stress responses in individuals. So this was for the experimental study details, and let's now talk about the experimental study continuous and which are the findings. So the findings from this study reveal some important insights about the effectiveness of the digital stress test, which is DST in short form, as I earlier mentioned that. And in inducing stress responses, participants in the DST group reported significantly higher preserved stress levels compared to those in the control group at every stage following the baseline measurement, with a very strong statistical significance. Additionally, DST participants experienced an increase in negative effect, a measure of emotional stress consistent with results observed in traditional stress inducing experiments like the trier social stress, which showed effect sizes ranging from 0.281 to 1.015. The effect size observed here was 0.427, showing that participants' emotional stress responses aligned well with these traditional methods. Physiological responses further supported these findings. Cortisol levels, a key biological stress marker, showed a significant rise from a baseline mean of 5.4 to 9.3 following the stress inducing tasks. So overall, I can say that the DST successfully induced acute stress responses, both in terms of self-reported stress and physiological markers. These findings demonstrate that the DST has the potential to serve as a scalable, efficient, and non-laboratory alternative to traditional stress testing methods. So this was for the experimental study. And now let's move forward for the non-experimental study details. So this non-experimental study by Soman and its colleagues in 2021 examined the link between maladaptive personality traits and mental health symptoms during the COVID-19 lockdown. The researchers hypothesized that traits like neuroticism would predict mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and acute stress at the end of the lockdown. Using a longitudinal correlation design, the study observed changes over without manipulated variables. It included 304 Italian adults, which were 75.7% women. Average age was 35.28 years, and who completed self-report surveys assessing depression, anxiety, and acute stress at both the beginning and end of the lockdown. Socio-demographic factors like gender, occupation, and education were also considered, and the findings highlighted how personality traits and socio-demographic factors can predict mental health challenges during crisis, offering a valuable insights into public mental health responses during stressful events like lockdown of the COVID-19. So let's move forward for the non-experimental study. And the non experimental study provides key insights into the mental health impact of the COVID 19 lockdown. At the start, over 43% of participants reported significant mental health symptoms like depression, anxiety, and acute stress. And by the end of lockdown, 32% still reported clinically relevant symptoms. And in all these findings, a major finding was that acute stress reactions at the beginning of the lockdown predicted ongoing mental health issues. Additionally, maladaptive personality traits, especially neuroticism, were significant risk factors. A positive correlation where R is equal to 0.45 was found between neuroticism and mental health symptoms, indicating that individuals with higher neuroticism were more likely to experience stress, anxiety, and depression. But despite some limitations, such as a higher proportion of female participants and the inability to determine pre existing conditions, the study highlights that early identification of maladaptive personality traits could lead to targeted interventions to support those most vulnerable during prolonged stress periods. So, this was all for the non experimental study. Now, let's move forward for the comparison in between experimental and the non-experimental. So when comparing experimental and the non-experimental studies, both have unique strengths and weakness. Experimental studies can establish causal relationships by testing stress-inducing tasks in controlled environments, minimizing external variables, but however, their artificial setup limits external validity, reducing a real-world applicability. And whereas non-experimental study, on the other hand, observes stress responses in naturalistic real-life settings with diverse large samples, offering practical insights, yet they cannot determine causality due to their correlation design and are susceptible to biases like self-report inaccuracies. In short, I can say that experimental studies establish cause effect connections but lack real world context. And on the other side, non experimental studies provide real life insights but cannot prove causality. Combining both approaches offer a more comprehensive understanding of stress. So, this was the comparison. And now let's talk about how the studies complete each other. So here I can say that experimental and non-experimental studies offer complementary insights into stress research. Experimental studies focus on identifying causal effects by testing stress responses in controlled settings, while non-experimental studies explore associations between personality traits and stress in real-life contexts. While combining these methods provide a more complete understanding of stress, experimental studies show how stress can be induced and measured, while non-experimental studies identify predictors of stress in everyday life. For example, experimental findings show mindfulness reduces stress, aligning with non-experimental observations that higher emotional regulations leads to lower stress levels. Together, these approaches highlight both the mechanisms of stress and the traits influencing stress responses. So let's move to our last slide, which is conclusion and discussion. So in the last slide, I can say that in conclusion, experimental and non-experimental studies provide unique yet complementary insights into stress research. Experimental studies establish causal relationships by testing interventions and stress inducing factors, controlled environments. And on the other side of the coin, non experimental studies identify correlations by observing stress patterns in real life contexts without manipulating variables. Combining both approaches offers a more complete understanding of stress, combining controlled causality with practical and real world observation. So, these are the references, and it's my little gratitude for our professor. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.